Hey everybody, DJ Lou here, and I want to talk about an Instagram message I had gotten about stepping up your game as a professional DJ. Let's talk about this. Alright everybody, before we start the video, please navigate down, hit that subscribe button, make sure you ding that notification bell as well. Also make sure to like the video, and please, if you want to support the channel, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. So before we kick this discussion off, just a quick word on things. Being a wedding DJ is definitely more than just knowing music, having the right equipment and all that. That's of course a major component of it. Being a wedding DJ encompasses so much more. I do have a big article that I made, What Does a Wedding DJ Do? I'll link it up over here. All the planning, all the knowing the ins and outs, backups, recovery, knowing the questions to ask. There's so many different elements of it. I'm not going to go into that on this video because it is so encompassing. This would turn into an hour-long video, and I don't want to drivel on with stuff like that. So this is specifically a video more geared towards those, that they've already done a few weddings, as this person will have been doing, and that they want to step up their game by, how do we get better music selection? Is there different equipment I should invest in? Things of that nature. So, before the comments starts rolling in, yes, there's a ton more about stepping up your game as a wedding DJ. This is more regulated towards music selection, about equipment choices, and particular mixing styles and things like that. So I just wanted to preface that before we really get into this. So I got into this interesting conversation with this DJ on Instagram. He's followed some of my things before, and he was asking how he could step up his game with like music selection, some additional equipment. And we started talking about what he was doing to this point. And ultimately, he was like, I've been using Spotify, I've done a few weddings, and, he's trying to figure out, what did the pros do? What makes them, elevate to a certain level? So that's where we're going to jump into this conversation. So I started asking him, had he used Serato or Virtual DJ or Traktor or any of those? So he responded to that with, I have not. And that's a portion of my question. Basically, how do the pros / big time DJs do it? I've done a whole bunch of weddings, and I have a few coming up, and I'd like to up my game and learn how the pros do it. I felt that getting the right DJ controller would help me with that. I have this whole sound equipment and the right attitude to do it. I just need to level up. Now, of course, I could have numerous conversations about certain controllers and mixers and what to do. I dove into his history a bit. He hadn't spun vinyl before, and he hadn't used, of course, software. So I was trying to figure out, how to best approach a response of, what do you need to do? And again, we started talking also a bit more about music selection. And I think that's where things really break down first, is knowing your catalog. It's knowing the music that gets the crowd responding. I've had a number of things. I've been doing my floor filler series. My floor fillers are these songs that in general, regardless of genre, age, and whatnot, these usually get people onto the dance floor. I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston, Billie Jean, Michael Jackson, This Is How We Do It, Montel Jordan, and so on and so on. Those songs that, for the most part, this is what you gauge your crowd by. If there's enough people to kind of come up onto the dance floor, you're going to have a pretty good night. If not, then you're going to have a big struggle for the night. Is this going to be a genre only? Certain people will dance to R&B, some people will dance to rock, some people will dance to hip hop, and so on and so on. But first and foremost, before software, before really almost anything else, it's knowing your catalog. It's knowing, okay, I'm going to start with This Is How We Do It. Okay, where am I going to go to next? Am I going to keep it hip hop? Am I going to go rock? Do I see enough people that I think that that would cater to? Same thing with R&B, funk, pop. The world's your oyster. Where are the people going to respond? And personally, for me, I don't usually like mixing up in blocks. I want to go, in most cases, maybe from a say a Bruno Mars who has that kind of retro vibe and all that. Well, maybe I want to go back to the 80s at that point, or maybe I want to flip over to hip hop, or maybe I want to go something a little bit more popular again. Maybe I haven't felt the crowd enough to be like, yeah, I think I know where some of this is going to go. So I like to actually kind of jump all around just a bit to kind of get a taste right off the bat. And a lot of times, I would say get two really major waves. Sometimes you get that first initial burst of people who want to dance right away, and you get that immediately on the dance floor. And for me, as a wedding DJ, I usually have two blocks of major dance segments. Usually the first usually follows after the first dance. And this can be anywhere between like a 15-minute block, 30-minute block, sometimes even more. And this again gives me a little bit of a gauge to go with. I know with a lot of weddings, I'll throw a bit more of the heavy hitters, and I'll sometimes even go a little bit more on the older side, just because a lot of times the older crowd will respond better, earlier on in the evening. As the night goes on, they might tire out some, they might decide that they have to head home. So I want to make sure I kind of address that crowd a little bit more, but I still, again, like to mix it up. I'm not one of those few people who is like, oh, I can't play any hip hop till past 9 p.m. or something like that. No, there's plenty of hip hop songs that can be very, attention grabbing to the older crowd and all that. So I am going to experiment a bit and see where things are going to be going. But again, it's knowing your catalog, and then it's knowing when to take risks. I want to throw those unexpected songs to really get people be like, oh, wow, I haven't heard this in so long. And those are the type of reactions that I like to have. I remember, this is way back, I think it was like 2014. I actually threw a video on this. I'll see if I can put it up over here somewhere, of this duo. We're coming off of cake cutting, and they were doing a Thriller type dance. They're kind of go back and forth, and we're right around that BPM to throw Thriller onto it. So I threw that on. They clearly didn't expect it. They gave that reaction that I was looking for, and that's what's great. Even when the crowds are small, again, I was just coming off cake cutting, so there was a lot of people still enjoying stuff. So I had a few people on the dance floor. What can I do with this particular part of the crowd? I saw a lead kind of work in, and bam, I found an avenue to make it really enjoyable. So those are the things that I kind of look for as a whole. Taking those risks, finding things that, people might either be expecting and don't even consciously know it, or something completely out of left field that they'd be like, oh, wow, this is just awesome. So those are the type of reactions that I look for. So with the first thing being knowing your catalog, the next thing would be, I personally, is the mixing aspect. Now, I know a lot of DJs don't mix. Some people will play begin and end, or they'll just do a quick, smooth transition between songs, but not beat match or anything like that. Now, I'm not going to get into this huge argument of, everybody has to mix. You should have scratching as part of your routine, that you need to do this, 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 and this. That you have to decide what your level of expertise, your comfort level, the way you want to deliver your service to your clients, you have to decide on that. Now, me personally, I've been doing this since '88, from vinyl and all that, over to CDs and of course digital. I've always loved finding those commonalities, finding those threads that make songs work together. And again, it could be disparate genres, disparate periods. I really always just liked, how am I going to go from song A to song B? And I think that's the next level of what a quote unquote a pro DJ does, is not just great song selection, which is absolutely critical to begin with, but then finding the way to get to point A to point B in the best way possible. This can be, in some cases, I'll drop the bass off track one. I'll kind of remix in the next track that I'm coming in with a 4/8 16 bar loop that's in there, and I'll just go with that. I give that preview essentially of what's coming in. Sometimes I'll drop it on the one. Every now and then, I'll do a quick scratch intro. Maybe it's a chirp scratch or something like that, just to kind of bring something in and be a little different. Now, I could go full bore DMC style mixing my crowd typically doesn't want that, and I don't want them to bore them with that or think that the attention belongs on me. So when I do use those techniques, I try to do it in such a way that it's not the focus that's on me. The focus is on them. There's just so many different combinations and things that you could do that I think as a professional DJ, this needs to be in your arsenal. You know, these beyond the sound, beyond the song selection, finding those things and executing it in such a way, and you don't have to be perfect. I've had many a train wreck mix in my life, even when I do my live shows. It's almost always one song. It's like, oh, I wish I would have done that a little better. And I actually review everything that I do, every live mix that I've done, every wedding that I've done for years now. I record it because I want to listen back to it, and it's like, where did I go wrong on this one song? Or, oh wow, this was actually a really, really good mix. I got to remember this next time. And I remember even mixes that I did in the 80s and 90s of some of the transitions that I would work into, because mentally that's always in my arsenal. So one is music selection. Two, for me personally, I think it's the art of the transition to get from point A to point B. Then when it comes to C, becomes much more a personal preference of controllers or mixers. Yes, you can do this as a laptop DJ. You know, this can definitely be done. But once you start getting out of the syncopated song side of the equation, and you can't rely on sync all the time, you gotta rely what's on front of you and have your fingers do the manipulation on a controller. I think that changes the dynamic quite a bit. There's definitely a lot of things that I personally am not comfortable with doing solely on a laptop, that I need some type of level of manipulation. Again, I'm old school. I need moving platters. I love the feel of vinyl. I like that tactile response, and that's why for me, controller-wise, I've tried a bunch of Pioneer gear, of course Denon gear, Numark gear and whatnot, and I always revert back to something with a spinning platter. When I finally got back into the game and everything, I was on a Traktor S2 control, and I felt disconnected from it. Even some of the routines I was doing always seemed just a little bit off, and it just wasn't latency. There was just something that wasn't right. And once I finally decided, when I got to be a wedding DJ, and I was able to invest into some equipment after I got a couple gigs under my belt, I knew that I needed something more competent. I ended up getting the Denon SC3900. Those, of course, are the moving platters, and a Rane 62 mixer. And I definitely felt much more comfortable, much more at home doing all these mixes. So for me personally, having that tactile response, having that way to manipulate, for me, I've gotten so used to the temporary changes you need to kind of match up, especially with older songs where they're not perfectly syncopated. Dragging my finger on the platter or nudging. The SC3900 delivered on that. Then it became the Numark NS7 II, and then the 3, and of course the Rane 12s as well. And again, that's my particular vibe. There's plenty of DJs who go, the regular controller route. I dare say on the NS7 III or the SC3900s, or now the Denon's got the 5000M and 6000M. This is a pretty small segment of the market. And I know I'm niche. There's just nothing I can do about it. But for me personally, this is where my creativity really, I think, kind of shines. It just, again, gives me that level of being connected with the music. But you have to choose your particular weapon in this, be it, say, a Denon 7000, really, really competent mixer. You've got some of the new, Pioneer gear that's out there. And again, I'm not the biggest Pioneer fan, but I know a lot of people swear by it. Find that controller that responds to you, responds the way the layout seems logical. You don't seem like you're fishing for things to be able to engage something. I know for me personally, I could do a lot of what I do just by position of hand. I don't have to be looking around to try to find most of the functions that I normally would do as a DJ. And I think that's where most professional DJs typically are at. They don't have to look too much at it as opposed to just putting their hands where they need to do and respond to it. So find those controllers or turntables or whatever you're going to end up using to your advantage. Don't be afraid to experiment and practice. I've been doing this for 3 decades. And granted, I took a long pause. I took a 12+ year pause between the last time I had spun at a gig and when I decided to restart my DJing and have a business. And it took me a little while to shake those cobwebs off and get back to where I was, some time ago. You're not going to be Jazzy Jeff. You're not going to be Scratch Bastard off the gate. If you want to get to that level, it is basically the constant daily hitting everything, understanding everything, executing it, and repeat. And I know, unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time with everything that I do, but I think I'm a fairly competent mixer. And combining that with my song selection, combining that with everything else that I personally have gained over the years in my IT career and other places, I've been able to deliver what I think is an exceptional service for my clients. And it's not just about music. Being a wedding DJ, DJing is almost one of the last things really out of it. But you have to have a very high level of confidence doing what you're doing, so that way everything else is kind of complementary. So I can't stress enough. A, you got to be comfortable with music selection, of course, knowing your catalog. B, and again, this is me, and not everybody follows this, but I think transitioning is a key component in all this. And then, C, when you do have the right equipment, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most expensive equipment, but it has to be something that you're comfortable with and it can execute what you want to do with it. There's a video and I hope you enjoyed it. So hit that thumbs up, make sure you hit subscribe below, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe if you can support the channel. And naturally, if you like videos like this and want to see more, check out everything else on my playlists. Stay safe.